Let me give the floor now to our guest of honor, Ulrike Lunacek, Vice President of the European Parliament. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for having me here as your guest of honor and addressing you before you get the chance to get some drinks and to talk with each other sort of more in an informal way. I'm very honored to be here, and I would like to thank especially the organizers of this event, young people, the Diplomatic Academy Students Initiative, and Mr. Pirker, who welcomed me here. I find it really a wonderful initiative of students, of young people who say, we want to discuss with those who take the decisions about what we want them to do and how they do it, and not just always wait for them to come to us. I find this really great. But let me also, not welcome, because you are the host here, but tell you thank you to Deputy Director Kepler-Schlesinger also for having these great events, not just this one, but many others in the Diplomatic Academy. And I can tell you maybe a bit just from my own experience. You know, when I went to university in Innsbruck, and I studied interpreting. Not political science wasn't that much on my, I was interested, but it wasn't that much. And at that time, I remember once thinking about, because a colleague of mine who studied with me, he's now an Austrian ambassador, Helmut Böck, some might know him. He then went to the Diplomatic Academy in Vienna, and I considered that, but that was, you know, when was it? End of the 70s, beginning of the 80s. Then I felt, no, for me, this wouldn't, I didn't feel like I would fit in here at that time, because I considered it to be something very conservative, very, sorry to say for those who were there at that time, but I simply, just comparing to what it is now, let me just take that comparison. I think you've come a long way of really doing great work for, and not just for Austria, but for Europe, and be it OSCE or be it European Union or Council of Europe, whatever, discussing foreign affairs, international affairs in an open environment, welcoming people who think differently, who not just think the same things, but who are enriching in their discourse. Unfortunately, I couldn't be here all day because it was another conference, a humanitarian conference held at the University of Vienna. So I'm glad I can talk a bit about my experiences with OSCE, a bit of also comparing where I see the strengths and the weaknesses of both EU and OSCE, and also sharing a bit of my experiences with working on the Balkans, mostly as rapporteur for Kosovo of the European Parliament, and also in the last period, not this one anymore, so more in the Southern Caucasus, mostly on Azerbaijan, which I still do in a way. But I won't be too long, don't worry, I'm not gonna give you, yes? Sorry, yes, I can. And can I close this thing, or will that cause any problems? No, not. Because then I can put the microphones maybe further here. All right. All right, but thanks for asking me also maybe to speak a bit louder and a bit slower. Now, when I started my work as a parliamentarian, which was in 1999, 2000 in the Austrian Parliament, and I did foreign affairs, and my first experience of international parliamentary work was the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. And I'm very glad to say, I think she isn't here anymore, that now the president of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly is a colleague of mine from the Austrian Parliament, Mrs. Krista Muttonen. And so I think that has also shown how OSCE Parliamentary Assembly has evolved and developed. But that was my first experience with the Parliamentary Assembly, and I found it so exciting. These three buckets, sort of baskets, yeah, and the different groups we could go to and resolutions to be done, working with parliamentarians across party lines, not easy always, but this international level of trying to push forward issues that OSCE stands for. Conflict prevention, and then post-conflict. What do you do when a conflict ends? How do you end conflicts? All of that, but also then looking into how about human rights in conflict zones? How about women's issues, also that, minorities, ethnic minorities, media freedom, all the things that I learned, yes, with OSCE at an international level to work with and to see how that functions. Of course, things don't always function as we'd like them to function, to work. And also the efforts we put in as parliamentarians, also at the European Parliament level, unfortunately, they don't always bring what we think. And I think that's, unfortunately, in times like these, and your conference is called Europe Under Pressure, and I think this is true for all of Europe, be it OSCE region, be it Council of Europe, be it European Union. Yes, it's all under pressure. And not just because of the topic you just had at the last panel, but in general, our structures put limits to what we can achieve. And there I find an interesting, on foreign affairs, an interesting parallel between OSCE and European Union. I mean, OSCE is based on unanimity, which is good in the sense when you have partners, when you have colleagues that you can really negotiate with and get to agreements that are then also implemented. It's difficult if some block, or one blocks, because then you need the one. One veto doesn't allow anything to happen, or just at a very low level. Well, at the European Union, we try to make it more sort of cooperative, but the fact is that in foreign affairs, it's still unanimity. It's all member states. And if one says no, then things will not happen, or they will only happen in a watered-down version that isn't important. I have to say, coming from a party that was raised with basis democracy and everybody decides and we try to get everybody included, I have to say by now I've come to a point where I would think that unanimity is problematic. And I see it in the European Union. I cannot judge OSCE as much, but for the European Union, even coming from a smaller party, from the Greens, I would prefer to see decisions taken, even if I don't agree, than having no decisions done or having them watered down to a level where sometimes you cannot even see how much is left. I'm not here to tell OSCE what to do, and I know this won't be possible anyway to change that. And I think when OSCE started, it was in 1975. I had my high school graduation at that time, and I remember it. And I thought, wow, that's a great initiative. And I think at that time, still of Cold War, it really meant a lot. What you did was really bringing the basics that the Iron Curtain could fall. I think without OSCE, well, KSE at that time, I don't know whether that would have happened. I mean, that's historians to tell, not me. So I think there was that important role. By now, I find, and there we have similar problems at EU level and OSCE. The frozen conflicts we have on this continent, mostly in post-Soviet areas, neither with sanctions nor with military doesn't solve it anyway, because it's political problems, basically. Nor with dialogues and talks. They last years, and hardly anything moves. Be it Ukraine, be it now, which is only more recent, but be it Transnistria, be it Nagorno-Karabakh. There's always lots of people who try to push ahead, and we simply don't get it done. So I think this is the challenge we face, because we ourselves, and I think I'm talking about all of us as Europeans, we simply don't manage to deliver what we promise. And of course, it's not yours or yours fault or mine. Yeah? It's simply that the mechanisms, we don't have the mechanisms, and political will isn't there on all sides to resolve it because there are other interests behind, and that makes it so difficult. But what I really appreciate when I work with OSCE is also the work you do on media freedom, on minorities, and especially ODIHR, on democracy and election observations. And there, I read something in preparing for this conference here. I read an article that meant there is lots of competition with OSCE and EU on election observations, and that some say that EU is like being copycat for election observations, taking away what ODIHR has been doing. I have to say, I don't know how you see that. I don't see that. The election observations I have been doing with EU, or at my time as a national parliamentarian with OSCE in Kyrgyzstan at one moment, but now also with European Union, it's very clear that EU doesn't do election observation missions in the OSCE area. That's ODIHR that does it. And I'm talking about the long-term ones. What EU does, we do election observation missions outside of the OSCE area. What we do inside OSCE area is have now from the European, talking as a European parliamentarian, have parliamentary missions which just go over the weekend, as national parliamentarians do as well. Yes, there was one case, I know, in Kosovo, the country I know best from the Western Balkans, where we also, there I can see that there might have been a bit of competition there on observing an election, a local election there, which the European Union usually does not do. But there we decided it would be good to have it. But nevertheless, I really would like to appreciate also from the side of European Parliament the work that OSCE has been doing and is doing on democracy, human rights, and also on election observations. They are extremely important, so please continue on that. This is essential. Also for us at the European Union, we learn a lot from you, from that. So this I find, I don't see this copy. I know that, and maybe a bit about Kosovo, I know that yes, there is some competition there. Because, but there's different roles, I would say. Yeah? The EU accession process is a very specific one. I mean, it doesn't go as fast as I'd like it to go for several reasons. I won't get into details here because I could talk an hour about that, but I won't. Don't worry. Excuse me. But I can see that with Declaration of Independence in 2008, with UNMIK stepping back, also OSCE has a lesser role than it had before. What I do regret, that there are not as many common projects as there could be, like on media, on women's issues. I mean, there's the UN Security Council Resolution 1325. This is something OSCE also does work with. We do work with that. So I think there are things that we maybe could do more together. And as one European parliamentarian that does foreign affairs work very much with the focus of human rights, of fundamental rights, of democracy building, because I'm convinced without countries that come from dictatorships or that do transforming processes, without democracy working, I mean, not perfect, nobody is perfect. Our democracies aren't perfect either, as in Austria we found last year, but in other places. But to really have people, the essence of democracy is that citizens have the feeling and the conviction that their voice is heard. Maybe not every day, but they can make their voice heard. And there are people listening to them from the top. And they don't have to shut up when they are critical, because that is the essence of authoritarianism, what we see in Turkey now, that criticism isn't allowed. Also in the Balkans, Western Balkans, there's some, and even inside the European Union, we have some who simply do not like to be criticized. I mean, as a politician myself, who comes from civil society background, I have learned the hard way that I'm also criticized sometimes, even by people that I worked with before, because we have different roles. I cannot achieve everything I work for. Civil society can't either. But criticism, I mean, that's the essence of a democracy. What would we, in societies where that is not allowed, it's silence. People are afraid. It's fear. And that's what's the essence for me of my political work, and I think also of OSCE is. Really try to help develop that spirit, that criticism is the essence. It's like the salt in democracy. Without that, you don't have democracy. If you put people in jail because they criticize you, sorry. I mean, you can talk to them. If they do something wrong, yes, do a court case. But also the justice system has to work. And here, we both need both of our efforts, both OSCE and European Union. Because justice, that citizens have the feeling, yes, this I can have justice in my country. In so many countries, also in the OSCE area, this is not true. People don't believe in that. And I think that is our common task, to really move forward on that. And I hope also for the Austrian presidency, this is important, focusing on that. Yes, de-radicalization, all that it's very important, and conflict prevention. But I find without that spirit of making democracies work, in a sense that people feel meant. They feel that, yes, it's my country. Maybe it's not my government, but I can change it at the next elections. But I can have a say in it, that media are not repressed, And I would really like to thank the work of all the special representatives you have on media, on ethnic minorities and others. I find it extremely important. We often in the European Parliament refer to your findings on that. So, in order not to have you wait too long, one final thing maybe. I also think that as OSCE and as European Union, we have to do more on disarmament. I know there's talk now with Trump and the way he's acting and saying that, especially for NATO, he doesn't want to support it anymore. I mean, it's not clear whether he really means that. We will see in the next years. There is talks also in the European Union that we need to raise defense budget, etc. I think that's the wrong way. That we could have a long discussion about maybe. But I think there we could also, on the Conventional Forces Treaty in Europe, we could also together achieve more and really cut down on arms that we have in this conventional arms race that may be starting again. This is another point I wanted to raise. So I'll, at the end, thank you for listening to me and waiting to get some drinks and be able to chat a bit. I'm glad, thank you very much for inviting me. Again, thank you for the initiative you're having. And I was told I can now open the reception. So enjoy the drinks and the talks you have, and have a nice evening. Thank you very much, and success to you. Thank you.